Hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby Pod. It's Heineken Cup time and quarter-final action. It's going to be a great weekend. But firstly, let's look at the big one at Welford Road. Leinster against Leicester. It should be an absolute cracker, shouldn't it?
Yeah, it should be. It's a great place to go and play. I've been to Welford Road many times. It's probably not the fortress it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. But Leicester on the way back. Their form this year in the Gallagher Premiership has been outstanding. They've won 18 of 22 games. Haven't been beaten at home. And I think that could be a challenge for Leinster. They're going to be the first side, if they win, to go and win there this season. Won their first 15 games, 13 in the Premiership and 2 in Europe before they were beaten on the 9th of January by Wasps. So their form has been really, really top class. Connacht did test them in both those games, the game in Welford Road and the game in Galway. Very, very close games. Showed some vulnerability and weaknesses. Probably clawed their way back into the picture. After being in a very good position, Connacht in the first half, but got a losing bonus point over in Welford Road, and then were unlucky, you'd have to say, to lose the game in Galway. That kind of indicates a little bit to me, and we're probably measuring. I'm kind of thinking of those performances against Connacht and what Leinster were able to do to Connacht a few weeks ago would suggest on paper that Leinster are a stronger side. Most of the Irish team play for Leinster. They'll be very fresh going into this game. Their players didn't go to South Africa. The internationals didn't go to South Africa the last couple of weeks. So they've been gearing up for this, and Leo Cullen usually gets his timing right with the way he prepares his team. But then I think those two performances in the round 16 fixtures, the home and away game against Clermont, Leicester were very, very impressive. I think winning 29-10 against Clermont in France in the first game was incredibly impressive. And I think they'll feel it. They'll feel that they can take on Leinster. They can physically go after them. So it should be a cracking game, Stuart. It should be a cracker of a game. Everybody's looking forward to this.
Matt, as Alan said there, Leicester have improved massively. But have they improved enough to beat Leinster?
Very good question, Stu, isn't it? We go back 12 months. Leinster went down to Sandy Park there against Exeter, and one of the best away displays I've ever seen from the Leinster side. Made a very, very good English club look ordinary. So it's a huge challenge, as Alan said. I agree, and it's the same with all the quarterfinals. They're just so hard to pick. We're giving opinions, but really it's going to be who turns up on the day. I think if I looked at it and said exactly what Alan said, the leading Leinster players, which are basically the Irish team, certainly the core of the Irish team, have just had a 2-week spell. And in that spell, obviously they've rested, they stay in your own houses. And if you've ever gone on the road, you know how much you come home, you love your own bed and some home-cooked food. They've done that for 2 weeks because the Six Nations, even one that you love, it's exhausting. It is very, very demanding physically and emotionally, and you are tired at the end of the Six Nations. They just had this great 2 weeks to recover. They've obviously done a lot of training, a lot of preparation, and that's going to stand them in good stead for May. You win tournaments in May, and I just think that has been a huge, huge bonus for this team. And I think Leinster it's going to be a really tough battle. I think Leo has got a lot of his planning right. Now, if you spin back, why could they do this? Because they dominated the domestic competition, the United Rugby Championship. They dominated it so much that they had that little window where they could go to Africa and lose 2 games and still finish first. Now, they had to get a bonus points, I understand. But he trusted his young guys and left the guts of the team behind to be training back in Dublin and recovering. And I think that is some absolutely brilliant organisation and brilliant planning. Leicester have improved. Have they improved enough, which was your question, Stu? Tomorrow we'll find out. I don't know. I don't think so. I think Leinster are really focused on this competition. And I think Leicester, while they'll really come out and give it a shake, as Quinny said, they were superb in Clermont. Absolutely superb. But I think the Premiership is where their heart really is this year. And I think that might be just the 5% to 4% to swing it Leinster's way. Not by any, I'm not saying that with total conviction. That's just a feeling, because it's these all, as I said, all these games this weekend. That's what makes quarterfinal weekend the best of the year. They're all so close, and they're all going to be great games.
Alan, is there still a bit of hurt there from Leinster not being the first team to win this competition 5 times? I think that sort of gives them a bit more sort of enthusiasm to go and win it, or is that just simply a past stat?
I think they would have liked to, be the first one to win it 5 times. Toulouse have done that. Doesn't really matter those kind of numbers when you're kind of stuck in the moment. I think what'll hurt Leinster more is the last 2 seasons, to probably the disappointments of going out in the knockout stages and right close to the end. Probably that La Rochelle one last season when they looked pretty comfortable. They started the game brilliantly, and a very good La Rochelle side performed really well in that second half. And I know there's a lot of focus on the physicality, and it is a factor sometimes, and Will Skelton was incredible in that game. But I think Leinster look back in the way they managed that second half last year, they'd probably be frustrated. But La Rochelle were brilliant, and that's what you get when you get to quarterfinals, semi-finals, finals of Europe. So you're going to be playing good sides. I think that hurt and that pain will be driving them on, and I'm sure we'll hear about it if maybe from the English media, if Leinster win this game, it will come up about the URC and the last 2 weeks that Leinster were able to rest 16 of their internationals and leave them at home. And but the last couple of weeks, I'm sure they would have been running Leicester plays against Leinster in Dublin here when they were training. Stuart Lancaster stayed home with him. He would have all his homework and due diligence done in Leicester. So they'll be very well prepared. And look, sometimes you can have all the preparation in the world done. You've got to know the opposition for sure. But tomorrow is going to be there's going to be a fair bit of physicality, aggression. And Leicester a side who can man up physically as well. If you look at some of their team, Jasper Wiese, number 8, very, very powerful and physical. Tommy Raffel, who's been having a brilliant season with him. They've got Julian Montoya, hooker. Ellis Genge, I think he's so abrasive, aggressive, and they've got power to come off the bench as well. And we've seen that. And you look at their backline. I'm always been a massive fan of George Ford. He's a really intelligent rugby player. If he gets good quality ball, and they probably will kick a lot. We've heard Robbie Henshaw and Hugo Keenan talking about it this week in the media that they're expecting a lot of kicks. So they have experience, but they've got to play and they've got to stop. If you're Leicester and you're analysing Leinster, you've got to slow their game down a little bit, stop them on the gain line. But easier said than done. That front row that we expect to be picked in Porter, Kelleher and Furlong that's going to be the starting front row against New Zealand, the first test in July. So they're world class. The back row the same. We're hearing rumours that James Ryan might be back in the squad, so that'd be an incredible boost for him. So, as Matt said at the start, this game is hard to separate because we don't actually really know where Leicester are as regards to Europe and playing a top team in Europe. I think the win in Clermont was incredible, and that's what worries me from a Leinster point of view, that they're capable of doing that. When you have someone like Genge who just doesn't really care whether he's home or away or who the hell he's playing, and that kind of attitude they've showed that this year, Leicester, they've got to play well to beat this Leinster side. They will know that. And it's a very difficult game to call. We're slightly nudging towards Leinster because of what we know of the Leinster team, their mentality, the quality they have, and the ability they have. But it's, I think if Leinster were to lose this, it'd be a massive setback to them because I think they're primed to go on and win this competition. But sport can be, Matt knows that as a coach as well. I know it from playing. You can have everything done perfectly all week. Even in 2 weeks up to it, and it's all about how you roll your sleeves up, and these are the type of games you got to step up to the plate and be physical and win the collisions.
Matt, there's plenty of battles all over the park that Alan sort of mentioned there. One we want to look at is George Ford against Johnny Sexton. What do you make of that battle? Two very good and very experienced players, obviously.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Alan. I've been a huge fan of George Ford. I think he's very underestimated. I think he's been hardly done by on the English setup at times. At club level, he's a maestro. Gordon Darcy did a very interesting article during the week in the Irish Times, and I thought Gordy was spot on, saying that Leinster, especially Josh van der Fleer, has to really get in George Ford's face to make him play deep. In other words, don't let him come to the game line and threaten, and make him kick further back, because then his chasers have to be further back behind him. And I thought that was really astute from Gordon, and I would agree with that completely. If it's really hard to answer your question, Stu, because when you're in the 9s and 10s, if your 9s and 10s play well, they should go and buy a beer for numbers 1 to 8, because it's all about laying a platform up front from your pack if your 9 and 10 can implement their attacking game plan. So it's going to be one, as always, in the forwards. What Leicester have to stop Sexton from doing, and no one's been able to do it for a long time, is catch the ball and go forward the whole time. Sexton's just, every time he's catching the ball, he is running forward. Even on the run-arounds, he's not running across field, he's edging straight up the field. And Leicester have to stop him doing that. Now, I don't know how they can. I don't know if they can. But that's the key. If Sexton is going forward when he gets the ball, he just sucks people in. He's got inside, outside. He's got a long pass. He's got a crossfield kick, short kick in behind. He's got everything. So he's hard to stop. And Ford's a bit the same. But I do think that the Leinster, we're talking about attack, I think the Leinster defence is something we don't talk about enough, because their attack is so good, it overshadows what they do and what they're doing. But I think the Leinster defence is really, really impressive this year. I think at times in past years it hasn't been good enough. Stuart Lancaster looks after both. I personally think that's a weakness. I think it's too much on Stuart. I think Leinster need in the future to bring in a specialist defensive coach. But for this game tomorrow, if they can keep forward deep and not allow him to keep coming to the game line, that's enough to win the game, because I don't think Leicester will be able to do the same to Sexton. And that means I think the Leinster pack will get on top. Now, Watford Road, it's a really tough joint to go there. Leo Cullen, the coach, was with me 20 years ago in a quarterfinal. We went there and we got the absolute daylights beaten out of us by Martin Johnson and co back in those days. And the crowd was incredible. They were a class act. And you didn't walk away with any animosity. You walked away with respect for what they had. And Leo Cullen played there. So he'll have them prepared. So if the Leinster pack can lay down the platform, I think that Leinster backline can provide enough to get a win just.
Alan, do you echo Matt's words there? Just a quick summary on this big match. Like, is it all just about the front eight?
Essentially, they've, in tight games like that, they've got to get their, the obvious areas that you need to get right to win matches are scrum, line out and breakdown. I think that's an area that Leinster have. The breakdown for them has been exceptional. Their accuracy around there, their speed of delivery, all that kind of stuff. And when they want to play with tempo, they're probably the best side in Europe to do that. I think Leicester will target them up front. You've got Dan Cole and Ellis Genge. Interestingly, Matthew Reynal is reffing this game. Ellis Genge caused Tadhg Furlong a lot of problems in that game in Twickenham between Ireland and England. We know some of them were very, very debatable and probably a bit of cheating going on. But I'm a fan of Ellis Genge. I think he's a very, very good player. He's wild at times, crosses the line a little bit, but he's going to have his team fired up. And I think that's a good Leicester front row. Whether they pick Cole or Montoya, Genge will definitely start. But they've got good options off the bench as well. And we saw them bringing on a lot of power up front against Connacht to really hurt Connacht's scrum. They won't be able to do the same to Leinster, but I think it's just the physicality of those players around the field as well. So it's a tight game, and I think you'd be naive to think that Leinster will just go here and do their stuff. This could be a real dogfight for Leinster. We know if they get on the front foot, and Matt referenced, we've lots of reference points for Leinster in Europe in the last number of years. So we know the mentality is strong. They love Europe. They're not afraid to go on the road and stick to their principles and perform. We've only seen glimpses of that. Like I said, reference again, Clermont away. They had a great win at the start of this competition as well over in Bordeaux, which I was really impressed with. They set their stall out early. They won 16-13 Leicester in round 1 in France. Back-to-back games against Connacht, and then they got the 28 points nil in the return fixture against Bordeaux. But it's going to be a tough game. It's a game that everyone's looking forward to. The crowd is going to be raucous there. There's going to be a lot of Leinster people have scrambled for tickets. And I just think this is what the competition, round 16 games, I thought were brilliant. The competition came alive. And, this is the biggest game of the weekend, this one. I think it's because both these sides are potential winners. If Leicester get through, they really fancy their chances of going all the way as well. So, obviously, we're going to talk about Munster, Toulouse in a minute, and what Toulouse can do as well. But it's a game that should be a cracker.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. And you said we're going to touch on Munster v Toulouse, and Matt, will come to you. Another big one at the Viva Stadium. No doubt, plenty of Munster fans. They've sold over 30,000 tickets. I think I'm right. Anyway, probably more. But what do you make of that, Matt? In the Viva Stadium, obviously, probably prefer to be in Thomond Park, I would say. But it's still going to be a big, big challenge for them, isn't it?
It is. Obviously, I think, Thomond's the spiritual home. But if they're coming up to Dublin to have, 35, 40,000 of the Red Army there, because there'll be some Toulousians come across, but not many. That will be a huge bonus. Look, this is a great Toulouse side, not a good one, a great one, but they have been out of sorts this year. The Toulouse of 2022 are not the team from last season when they won Europe and the top 14. Now, a lot of that is because injury, COVID, and they lost so many players to the national side. Toulouse lost 5 in a row at one point there in the top 14. That's the good news. Now, the bad news is last week against Ronan O'Gara's team, La Rochelle, Toulouse put in their best shift of the season. They were sensational. And while they were sensational across the park, their defence in particular and their work at the breakdown was just unbelievably physical. La Rochelle found some joy behind them in a kicking game, a great try to Brice Dulon early in the match. Unfortunately, went up with a broken rib. I don't think he'll be playing this week, which is a blow to Ronan and La Rochelle. They're not unbeatable. But the trouble with Toulouse for Munster is they're just littered with so many brilliant individuals, and people must get sick of us talking about Dupont. But last week he was just incredible. He created holes that simply weren't there by his footwork, his speed, his acceleration. His defence is incredible. He picked up Gregory Aldred, the French number 8 playing for La Rochelle, charged off the back of a maul, and Dupont's on the short side. Dupont hits him with a front-on tackle. So Dupont's about 5 foot nothing, and Aldred's 6'4". He hit Aldred, picked him up, and drove him backwards in just like a brilliant tackle you'd expect from a giant short side flanker on a number 8. It was magnificent. That's the problem with Toulouse. They've just got individuals that can rip you apart. You can go toe-to-toe with them for 78 minutes, as Ulster found out. But in the 2 minutes you don't go toe-to-toe with them, they'll score 3 tries. So it is a huge mountain that Munster are climbing. Not impossible by any stretch of the imagination. It was a very good Munster side. I think Munster, since the announcement of Graham Rowntree being their head coach, and great news that Prendergast coming back as their attack coach, which Alan and I will have a chat about, I think, later on, because we were talking about it. I think you'll find that that's really focused the players. They got direction, they got leadership, They know where they're going next year. And that's a huge thing within an organisation. But it's still going to be a mountain for Munster to climb. Not impossible, but a huge, huge challenge.
Alan, Munster over the last sort of couple of months are starting to play some pretty good rugby, but Matt mentioned a mountain decline. Is it too big a mountain, or what do you think of it?
It's a big mountain, but all you can do is put one foot in front of the other, and that sounds simple, I think, and take a bit of pressure on the legs if you're climbing that mountain, and that's what Munster have got to do tomorrow. You know, they can either go with the narrative here, sit back, applaud Toulouse throughout the game, and kind of or really go for this. So psychologically, they've got to be on fire in their heads tomorrow. They've got to be really, really intense for 80 minutes. You can never switch off, and I think Ulster switched off a couple of weeks ago. You know, Stuart, heartbreakingly, two pieces of magic from Intimac. And actually 3 tries. I look back at the games. Intimac, Dupont, 3 tries that Ulster would look back and say that cost us cost us going through to the quarterfinals. The intercept, the break from Intimac is there. Ramos on his shoulder. Dupont, what he can do as well. They're just so dangerous. And they've got a lot of power up front, Cyril Bay, Marchand, Aldeghiri, Mo Vaca to come off the bench, 10, 12 guys involved with France for the Grand Slam. It's just right across the board. And the 2 that jump out, and Matt has spoken about them, is Dupont and Intimac. If they get on the front foot, they're magical players, they're world class. So when you start talking about Toulouse, you start thinking, God, how are Munster going to possibly win this game? They've just got to front up and build on the confidence in the last couple of weeks. Munster had 17 offloads last week against Cardiff. I know it's a different proposition, but it indicates that they're a little bit more confident in what they're doing. They're a little bit more cohesive in what they're doing, and they're trying to play with a little bit of tempo. If 1 or 2 of those pass the stick and they get ahead of Toulouse, well then roll up the sleeves and you get a surge out of that. If you go back to Connacht's Munster at Christmas in the sports ground, Munster had 1 offload. They passed the ball 45 times. They passed the ball 220 times against Cardiff last Friday night. So there's a huge contrast. And I think that is the only way you can beat Toulouse. Matt, if you sit back and try and contain a wonderful side like Toulouse, you're going to be in trouble. You've got to score tries. So Munster have got to be brave. And I think Ulster showed us the template in those round 16 games. Attack. Try and get width in your game. Get pace. You don't have to fling the ball around everywhere and risky passes. But I mean, just try and keep going. Pace, tempo, move the ball. And if Munster starts slowing the ball down, languishing around the back of breakdowns and putting up box kicks, thinking that's going to win him a game. It's not. You've got to attack Toulouse, and that's if you look at a weakness in any attacking team, it's the same when you play the All Blacks. What are they not used to doing? Defending for long periods. If you can hold on to the ball, you can sometimes frustrate very attacking-minded teams. I know Matt said their defence was superb last week. But if you want to win a game against a good side, you've got to try and play some rugby. And I think Munster are better equipped, Stuart, this week. And on the back of the last 4 or 5 games, the 2 Exeter games, the Ulster game, the Cardiff match, that they feel better about themselves, I would say. Is it going to be good enough to beat a star-studded side? I don't know. The simple facts of the matter, Toulouse are a wonderful side when they turn up. They're incredibly powerful. And another area with their massive strength is that impact off the bench, that power. So who knows? I think the game coming out of Thomond Park is different. I think Thomond Park would have, but Toulouse went there last year. Maybe, they won 40 points to 33 last year in the round 16 game. So maybe it'll come up after this game. But I'm looking forward to it. I think there'll be a sea of red. It'll be great to see Munster fans back in the Aviva, and it should be a special day. I just really hope the that this Munster side are brave, that they have a cut, that Joey Carberry put something on it, that he can get it to Dialende and Chris Farrell and these guys can run at their opposition. And who knows? The odds are stacked against him. You said it at the start. You summed it up perfectly. Munster have a mountain to climb. But, they've got to get the basics right. And like I said, put one foot in front of the other. And they have a chance, but you'd fancy Toulouse.
Matt, a final one from you on that game. Do you agree with Alan that Munster have to play?
Yeah, 100%. You can't rope-a-dope a team like Toulouse. You've got to attack them. And look, they had if we go back to that game at Thomond Park last year, the game that Munster lost, Damien Dialende and absolutely ran over Zach Holmes at outside centre in the first half about 5 times. And Toulouse have a weakness at outside centre. They can't get – Zach Holmes is an Australian guy. He's brave as all get out. You wouldn't get a braver guy. He's an out half that they play often at outside centre. They had Nanai Williams they bought from New Zealand. Now, he has had a lot of injury and has been well below the great form that he displayed when he was playing Super Rugby. Now, last week they had a very solid but not outstanding local guy playing at outside centre. So they've got a weakness there. Now Munster have to attack that weakness. Now, the point I'm bringing back to last year is that in the second half last year, for some reason, they stopped attacking Zach Holmes. And I can't tell you why. Now the game changes and maybe they had the plan, they just couldn't implement it. But the plan they had last year for 40 minutes was really good. Munster were on top. But they stopped it in the second half, and obviously Toulouse played better. But what they did last year at Thumb in that first half is the template they have to follow. And Toulouse did not look at all happy with what Munster were doing to them. So Munster do have a chance. Toulouse are not the team of last year, but they're coming good. And they are European royalty, as Munster are. But they've got their sights set on Europe, probably more they have than the top 14 this year. They knocked Ronan's team back to 7th. So they're 6th in the top 14. That's the tough draw. Unless you finish 1 or 2, you're really up against. They're not going to finish 1 or 2. So I think they're focusing on Europe. So what does it mean? It means it's going to be another great game. Great game. You'd have to say Toulouse are favourites. But again, this is not writing Munster off or saying it's impossible. Munster have a great shot in Ireland in a beautiful stadium full of red. They're going to have a really red-hot go at Toulouse.
Well, let's hope it's a great game. Oh, just on other news this week, Mike Prendergast joining Munster next season. I know you're a friend of his. You must be delighted for him and I would say for Munster.
Yeah, I am delighted for him personally, for sure. I'm delighted for Munster because I think his enthusiasm, his experience that he's learned in France, being on the road for 9 years now. Mikey was always an intelligent rugby player. Had to do it a hard way because, someone like, and Roger won't mind me saying this, someone like Roger or Paul O'Connell, these guys, they have that profile to go with them as players. They can, probably have a bit of wriggle room to struggle in their coaching roles a little bit, and they'll get picked up, and people will back them because of their playing careers. Mike didn't have that, even though he was a very good player, but he wasn't an international rugby player. Went to Grenoble with Bernard Jackman, got the opportunity there. Brave decision, went off on the road, spent a couple of years there, went to Oyonnax, stayed there for a couple of seasons. They got relegated, and Matt will tell you about how competitive it is when you come up a division into the top 14, how difficult it is. You need big budgets, you need big squads, but they anyone I spoke to, they loved him in Oyonnax. His attacking game, the way they played. A lot of the games they lost, they were scoring 30, 40 points and losing by a couple of points. Teams were, they were scoring lots of tries. So his attack was brilliant there. Spent a season with Stade. Heineken Mayer was coach, and that whole kind of coaching ticket broke up. I think philosophies were different for everybody involved. And then he went to Racing, and Racing paid money for him. He had signed with Toulon a pre-contract agreement, and Racing pushed really hard to get him out of that and took him to Racing and gave him a 4-year contract. which was a big statement, and it just shows the level Mike was at in France, the mentality and the reputation he was gaining for attack, for skills, for being able to communicate with French players, to be a fluent French speaker, and to be so positive in his approach to the game. And, Finn Russell, I've spoken to him over the years, Gail Fiku in the last couple of seasons, Wenceslas Laure, they love him. I think, and they love his approach to the game. So I think he's a big coup for Munster. Number one, he's one of our own. And I know I saw some online where someone said, oh, well, have we not learned our lesson before bringing back homegrown players? Yeah, there was a big crew of homegrown players, probably 2014, 15, who were involved with Munster. The team was different. Those guys probably didn't have the experience of being on the road. So there's no guarantee this will work out for Mike or for anybody else that gets involved, or Graham Rowntree. But it's exciting because this team is crying out for more attack, more improvement in skills, more pace to their game, and that's what he does. So his primary role is that he's an attack coach. He's going to be the attack coach, and I think knowing him and knowing the way he looks at the game and views the game, it excites me. And I've said this to him this week. I was talking to him. I've been talking to him a fair bit. The pressure starts now. When obviously he's got to finish out the season with Racing, and he's very, very grateful. Racing have released him from his contract, and he's gone home for family reasons. His wife and kids have been on the road for a number of years too. So for him to get back to Limerick, but there's going to be a lot of scrutiny now. It's a big job. Munster are a big club who need to get back on track. And so I think it's a brilliant appointment for him, and it's a brilliant appointment for Munster. And but you've got to deliver, and he's got to bring his own mentality and his own views to the team now and try and upskill the players. I think there is some very exciting young players that will benefit from his experience, not just working with French players, and Matt knows this too, actually working with top-class international overseas guys. The top 14 is scattered with a lot of quality overseas players as well. And just seeing their approaches in warm-ups, their catch-pass skills, their lines of running. So I think Mike has learned a lot, and I think he's ready now.
Matt, Alan touched on his CV. It's very impressive. Obviously, you live in France. What's the thoughts over there? How highly rated he is? And also, is he the man to take Munster to the next level, certainly in attack?
I just think it's brilliant for Munster. Alan and I were talking months and months ago when the news broke of Coach Van Graan departing. And I asked Alan about Mike, would he be interested in coming home? And I'm not talking out of school here, because I rate him. I totally agree with everything Alan said. Look, as a coach, you've got to have the attitude that you never, ever stop learning. And once you think you got it all sorted out, you're finished. You're gone. It's over. You've got to learn every day. And you learn off your players, you learn off your peers, and you learn from mistakes, and you learn from your successes. And the only way you stay in a coach for more than 2 or 3 years is if you've got that attitude. And Mike's got that attitude. As Alan said, he's moved around a few clubs. They're all really good things for you because you learn in every different environment. So Mike has got all these learnings. He's going to bring them back. And some things are going to work at Munster and some things not. It's going to take him, 6 months, 12 months to figure out what really is the way to do it at Munster. But all of that is good for Munster rugby. The other part is, on a bigger picture, you look at how wonderful Ireland's playing pool is. But we got this thing about Irish coaches that there's some reason an Irish coach goes away, we can't bring them home, they're not good enough. And that is absolute rubbish. That is absolute rubbish. You look at Jeremy Davidson, you've got at Brive, you've got obviously Rowan at La Rochelle, you've got Small McCall at Saracens, who's one of the most successful coaches in European rugby, but no one ever talks about bringing him home. To bring Mike home, I think, is a really big statement because what Irish rugby has done well is develop players, but they haven't developed coaches. And Mike coming back into the Irish system, I think, is a huge statement for Irish coaches, and I think is a really positive move for Munster in the long run. I've got nothing but respect for Mike Prendergast, and I think it is a really, really good move for Munster.
Yeah, exciting times indeed for the province. We touch on the other two quarterfinals quickly. La Rochelle, Montpellier, very tough one to call, isn't it?
It is a tough one to call. I think, obviously, Rog and La Rochelle would have been devastated last season. They made massive progress to get into two finals. The disappointment of losing both of those would have been, incredible for them. It's a French. This is kind of French derby stuff, isn't it? You just don't know. Like Montpellier on paper could actually win this competition. It's incredible to think. They went to Exeter in round one, were beaten 42-6. They were beat 89-7 by Leinster in round three, and potentially they could win this competition. The reason I say that, and for any of the listeners that don't realise, if you Google the Montpellier rugby squad, there's going to be about 50 players there, and probably 40 of them are internationals. They have a lot of great young players as well, and their S4s and their academy coming through. Philippe Saint-André has mixed and matched all the way through. Like the team that went to Dublin to play Leinster it was practically an academy side scattered with a few, seasoned internationals. They got a lot of criticism for that, but then they stepped up in the last game and beat Exeter 37-26 at home and got themselves into, by the skin of their teeth, into the round 16 game. Again, over in Harlequins, they've had Harlequins in the first game of that round 16. They were exceptional, put themselves in a great position. Quins clawed their way back, got a couple of tries, and they're a very attack-minded side, Quins anyway. But then, he goes and picks a weakened side, which they argued afterwards for the home game against Quins that it wasn't, they backed themselves to win that game. They got through by the skin of their teeth. I lost that game against Harlequins, and late missed kick could have put them out. But what I'm trying to say is they have an incredible squad, and Roger will know this as well. They they're capable of beating anyone on their day. It is in La Rochelle, so but there'll be an incredible determination from La Rochelle to try and win this. Will Skelton didn't play last week, but they have some great players. Gregory Aldred, for me, top class with France every time. He's a real leader for them. Kerr Barlow is a superb player. Bugarit at hooker, brilliant player. So they have a good squad, but it's a very risky one because Matt probably knows this from living in France. On their day, Montpellier, they're top of the pile in the league as well. This is going to be a tough one for La Rochelle, even though you would have to think that home advantage will probably be enough to get them across the line.
Matt, I don't think you would sleep at night if Montpellier won this competition after losing by 80 points in Dublin to Leinster in the same season.
Yeah, it is what it is, Stu, isn't it? It's I love the Heineken Cup. It's my favourite competition. I don't agree with the competition structure, but we're at the quarters, and the quarters are great. The quarters are what, to me, are just the best weekend of rugby of the year, club rugby. I just can't wait. Now, don't get me on to why La Rochelle and Munster and the Leinster game are overlapping. Like, if someone can explain the logic of why we don't, and I've heard there's problems. Like, solve the problem, boys. That's your job. Like, so if we're watching, and as all Ireland we'll watch Leinster, but we also want to watch Ronan's team. Like, Ireland supports La Rochelle because of Ronan, and we can't watch it. I mean, that's madness, isn't it? I mean, like, let's not bother with the stupidity. The thing that makes me swing to La Rochelle, and I'm with Quinny on everything, is that Willems, their captain, Paul Willems, the captain of Montpellier, is out. Now, he came back from that French tournament, and the next week they put him, Philippe Saint-André, the coach of Montpellier, put him straight in to the game. I'm just trying to remember who it was against. It might have been against Bayonne. I just can't quite remember. And I thought, gee, that's strange. Give him a week off, let him recover. And Willems, it was magnificent. He was captain. He scored 2 tries, and he was driving them. You could just see him And Alan knows what a driving captain's like. Like, he was shaking his finger at him. His example was incredible. He was physical. He was dominant. And he wasn't letting them off. And he wasn't letting them slack off, even though they were up. And he has really developed into a great leader. He is a massive, massive blow to that game. And I agree with Alan. Look, I can't pick who's going to win that. I'm not. If you're going to put any money on, don't listen to me because I don't know. But if with him in, I would have said Montpellier. With him out, it's going to be better. And Awas, the tight end prop, I believe is out as well. I believe he's suspended. He got sent off last week. It was a tough one. He collided with the Lyon fullback in about the 10th minute. So Lyon played 70 minutes with only 14 men. I believe he's suspended now. I have only been told that. I haven't checked that out. But that both of those probably swing it a little bit towards La Rochelle, but tough game to pick. At La Rochelle, great place. Ronagar is a king there at the moment, and the place absolutely buzzes on match day. I've coached there against them. I can tell you it's a hard place to go. So it's going to be a great game. Tight as anything. Couldn't pick it. But I hope for Ronan's sake they win, but it's going to be a tough one.
Interesting. You can't pick it. Should be a good one, Matt. And lastly, Alan, our game on Sunday. Racing, of course, lost in the final a couple of times against Sale. They're probably not the side they used to be, if that would be fair, but they're still pretty good, littered with plenty of superstars, aren't they?
Yeah, they've improved. I think kind of up and down. Fixtures, I think, particularly at kind of midpoint of the season, but they've had a pretty good run recently, and they're a powerful side. They have a lot of quality when you look at, Camille Chat, Gail Fiku, Wenceslas Laurie, Shivansi, Vakatawa, Teddy Tama, Finn Russell. These guys, if they get ball to their back line, I think they're an exceptional side. And probably one area where they've struggled a little bit at times was probably in their line-out execution. So they're coming up against a very strong set-piece side in Sale. A lot of South Africans, Faf de Klerk kind of guiding them. So it's a tough one. I think being at home, again, home advantage. It's hard to win away from home in quarterfinals. But Racing's best performance was in round one. I think they were exceptional away at Northampton, showing us glimpses. But their form in the top 14 has been pretty good recently. So again, they're a side full of confidence. But for Sale, I think we did the first game, Sale Bristol. It was horrendous. 10-9, Bristol won. Second game was a great game a week later. It was an absolute complete contrast. It was a brilliant game. Tuolangi, when he gets the ball for Sale, he can cause untold damage. It looks like he's going to be playing with him this week. Lou Dieger, the Dupree brothers, they have a lot of power. They have a lot of physicality. And you cannot rule out the fact that they could go to Racing and really kind of go after him up front and frustrate the life out of him. And, they have some very, very good players, Sale. They're a good side. So again, it's a very tight game to call.
Yeah, it certainly is. Right, lads, as I always say, the boring bit, but the best bit, the predictions. Matt, we're going to come to you first. What two semi-finalists do you see?
Well, I'm going to go with the low-hanging fruit because all four of these games are so hard to pick. I think Leinster will win. I think Toulouse will win. I think La Rochelle will win, and I think Racing will win. And I'm not sure on any one of those predictions. It is just so hard to pick. But if I'm pushed to say who I think will win, that is it. And I hope I'm definitely wrong with Munster. I hope Munster win. I just think it's going to be really hard for them.
And Alan, who's going to make the semi-finals for you?
I'm probably the same. 2 away wins, Toulouse and Leinster, and 2 home wins in the other 2, La Rochelle and Racing. I think that's the way it is on paper. But and history is kind of the history of this competition. It's very hard to get away wins, and I'm going for kind of Toulouse away win and a Leinster away win. Given the no one can criticise us for this, given where both those sides are. Toulouse won it last year, given where Leinster are. Again, I think, look, it's going to be, there's part of me thinks Munster have a great chance here. So I really hope, again, obviously from a Munster point of view, they win. I think Leinster will win in Leicester. It's going to be hard fought, very difficult, but I think they have the know-how to do it. And again, you're kind of splitting hairs with the other one, La Rochelle and Montpellier. That's probably the hardest one, with this being an all-French quarter. But you kind of be nudging at the home quarter final, and the same with Racing. I think Racing on their day, if they get it right up front, they can be very powerful as well. So yeah, same as that with Matt. I'm agreeing with him. Hope we're wrong though, particularly on the Munster one.
Great stuff, man. Well, let's hope we see Leinster and Munster go through to the semi-final. Don't forget to join us on Sunday, 2:30 on Virgin Media 2 as Racing take on Sale Sharks. Man, it's been a pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Stu. Thanks, Al.
Cheers, lads.